Well, good morning again to all of you out there in YouTube land. Hope everything is well. I'm Chris and this is the Wooden Workshop. Last time we saw each other I was sanding the wood for the custom coat rack with handy cubbies for your gloves or your wallet or your phone that a customer has ordered from me. Today we're going to be waxing those pieces. Waxing is a lovely part of the process. You really start to see the wood shine through. So I'm looking forward to showing you this. Let's go. So here we have all the pieces, still laid out as they were before, ready to be waxed. And over here we have all the bits we need. We have the wax, we have the screwdriver for opening the wax, we have the brag, and we have the towel to protect the surface. So let's crack on and do this. So the first thing I'm going to do is give all of the pieces just a little wipe with my rag, just to make sure that there's no dust left on them. The rags I use, it's important to use a lint-free cloth or you get little bits stuck everywhere. You can use old t-shirts. They're not the best, but you can use old t-shirts. Old bedding as well as it's not the fluffy sort. You can use, again, it's not brilliant. I found that old linen clothes work well. My wife was binning some linen trousers a while back, and I'd cut those up and use them quite effectively. The rags I actually get them from Amazon. I'll put a link below if I can remember how to do it. But £10 for a kilo of rags. That box there is basically full of my last purchase. Cut them up into little pieces, about A5-ish, and it works really well. They last a long time. They leave a good finish, and you have to spend a little bit of money, right? Okay, that's them all wiped down so they're not dusty anymore. I'll start on one of the smaller pieces, one of these. So, the wax. It's a solid wax. This is Bry Wax. I always use Bry Wax. I'm not sponsored. These are my gloves. Of course we need gloves because this wax is horrible, horrible, horrible to try to wash off. So you wear gloves. Ordinary plastic gloves, disposable. Getting them on is the fun bit. Dum-de-dum, dum-de-dum. Talk amongst yourselves. There you go, there's one, and the other one. There we go. I'm aware that sometimes you can see my phone in the shot. My phone is what's controlling the camera and is what's letting me see what I'm actually recording, since I have the camera strapped to my head. Okay, so now we start. Fold the cloth over so we get a bit of a point. Scoop out a little bit of wax. Now I always start on the cut ends because the cut ends can take a lot of wax. Now this is brand new wood as far as the wax is concerned. It's brand new exposed wood, so it takes quite a lot on the first coat. So for the ends, you see I'm just wiping backwards and forwards, picking up bits from the edges because we don't want them getting too sticky, and that's covered very nicely. We don't put too much wax on the cloth, and we just rub it in side to side for now to get us started. Always better to have not enough wax on the cloth than too much. You see I'm trying to make sure there are no little gaps. Now I say this is first coat. First coat is always the tricky one because it just wants to suck in the moisture. So that's that end done. So now I'll do the edges. The edges are much easier because they are the original edges. There's no, what I mean is there's no end grain on them. There's no swirly patterns to fill in. So a nice rub all over, taking off the edges as well. Make sure it's covered, then flip over. I have a towel on the bench to protect the bench, and so I don't get wax absolutely everywhere. So smeary, smeary, smeary. These are the easy bits. In places where the wood is a bit more, shall we say, textured, like this bit here, I will push a bit of wax into there with my fingernail, if I can. Not having it this morning, so I'll use a little bit of a lump and come crossways so it scrapes in, and then use my fingernail to even it out a bit. Now the flat surfaces, when I first started using wax, I used varnish to start with, because everyone defaults to varnish, don't they? But varnish is sticky, it takes a long time to dry, you don't get the best finish, I believe. So wax. When I was first starting to use wax, I looked up YouTube tutorials, as you do, and they were talking about going with the grain and all sorts of things. What I find, don't go with the grain straight away, especially on reclaimed wood. Use a circular motion. So I'm going to go circular one way and then circular the other way, and what that does is it gets into all the little nooks and crannies that you might not fill in if you just go with the grain. Now once you've done all that, you can see that half is covered. I'm now going to go with the grain, finishing off at the end. I'm just going to brush the end there like that, and then go along. Brush the end, it gets rid of any bits, but there's a line there, so then we brush back like that with the cloth to make sure there's no line. Turn it round again, another bit of wax on the cloth, not too much. Circular one direction, circular the other direction. Keep an eye out for any bits that are not filling in, and make sure you come back to them. There you go, you can use backwards and forwards, side to side, anything to get that wax into the gaps, and then swoop off the edges and rub along. There we go. Now the customer wants this Jacobean colour, which is a lovely dark colour. It works really well on these shells actually. Might not be to everybody's taste, it is very dark. Now this side is the bumpier side, and this is where the circular movements are going to come in much more, because it's very bumpy, there's a lot of nooks and crannies. So we start with our circular motion. You can see straight away that it is leaving more gaps, so we keep going with our circular motions. And now we can do around the edges, a little bit there that's been left behind, so I'm just going to get a dab of wax and rub on there. That's it. And then around the edges as usual, back, 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 back. Turn it around again, and once again, round and round motions. Now, I find waxing extremely therapeutic. It does smell. I have got the door, you can see I've got the door wide open there, so that I get a little bit of airflow. I've got my air vent through to the garden shed just up there. So I carry on applying wax with that swirly motion, one way then the other, and then brushing the end and brushing along the grain. So that is one piece done, first coated. So I just prop it up over here. The wax will not come off and stick to the worktop, which is good. And so this second piece, same pattern again. Because it's newly exposed wood, it takes quite a lot of wax, so I brush it on gently to start with, and then rub it in. Just get the edge, catch the edges, so I don't get any lumps. There we go. It just brings out the beauty of the wood, doesn't it? And remember, this started its life as rough old pallet wood that would have gone in the bin. And that's what I love. I love giving the wood a second chance. I don't believe that wood should be rubbish. Sometimes it's unavoidable, I appreciate that. If you can give offcuts to anyone who's got a log burner, or just use them for your own fire bin in the garden of an evening. But I don't think wood should be thrown away, unless it's unrecoverable, of course. But I do love using reclaimed wood. I love giving it that second chance to show just how beautiful it can be. And as you'll see as we go through this process, how beautiful it can be is extraordinarily beautiful. So, edges, be careful of lumps. Always be careful of lumps. I've got a lump here, look, on the end, and I'm just going to rub that in there to start that side off, making sure I don't have any lumps on edges there. So you see my rag is getting a bit grubby now, but that's okay, we carry on with it. And this area here is a bit rougher, so rub over it a bit more, try and make sure I've got those gaps filled. There we go, and there we go. I do find waxing, as I say, I find it remarkably relaxing, and it is the stage of the process where you actually start to see what you're making. You start to see the outcome. Now, this little knot here will probably give me a bit of a problem with the wax, but once the wax is on, it will look beautiful. So I said it would give me a problem because the sander hasn't taken all of the roughness out of it. Again, wiping the edges to make sure I've got no lumps, but it's actually taken quite well this time. There we go. And then we do the same on the other end. Circular motions one way, circular motions the other way, distribute the wax all over the surface. Before giving the edges a wipe and then wiping it back in two. Give the edge a wipe, wipe it off the end. A little bit there hasn't taken. There we go. Never be tempted to use more wax. It will not give you better coverage. So plastering it on nice and thickly will not work. You'll just end up with sticky, lumpy wax. And if your wood, like this piece here, has got the grooves in it, then you'll end up with little lumps that pick out, and then that's not giving a good effect. So I keep on going round and round, swirly swirly, both ways. It does make your thumb hurt a bit. So this first coat is always the difficult one. Takes longest, uses more wax, and makes your thumb hurt. Makes your chicken drumstick, that bit there, makes your chicken drumstick hurt, because you're holding onto the cloth so tightly. Got another knot here, this is quite a recessed one. That is going to give me a bit of trouble. So rub the wax all over it, really get in there with your finger, try to fill in all the gaps. See, I'm not exactly running with the grain here, am I? But once you've got it rubbed in, then you can go with the grain. And it is important to go with the grain when you've finished applying, because otherwise the wax, a bit like paint on a wall really, if you apply it in a slapdash fashion, it does show. So if you apply the wax in a slapdash fashion, it does show. Now this is the divider, of course, for the cubby section, and you may think, well actually, hang on, this bit is going to be fitted like that, so this surface is never actually going to be seen. So why are you waxing it? Well, I'm waxing it because then I know it's done. bit there not wanting to get filled in. There you go. Again, quite thick here, so I'm just sort of smearing it off again, so I don't have a nasty thick layer of wax to contend with later. Yeah, the surfaces that are never going to be seen, you may think, well, wouldn't it be easier? Like this one, that's not going to be seen, that's going to be attached to the top shelf. So you may think to yourself, why do you bother waxing them? Because no one's ever going to see them. Well, the point is, depending on how well it all goes together, you might see a little bit of the edge of this side. But actually, it's more for quality purposes, to be honest. I know it's been done. I know it's been waxed. And I know that I've given this piece the best attention that I can. So that's the difficult bit done. And we come round to the sort of original sides of the plank, sanded down. There we go. Just taking the edges so I don't get any lumps hanging about. You see some of the wax is transferring to the towel, that's why it's there. Just stops my bench top getting too messy. So we do that. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Just going to have a quick paranoid look at the phone to make sure it is actually recording. Yes, it is, that's good. So now we're left with the flat sides, and again, not too much wax on my cloth. I haven't got a great big lump or anything. And then round and round and round and round. Round and round and round the other way. Don't try to do the whole thing in one go. You can see I've got a lump here. I don't want that, so I'll swoop it off. Swoop it off down that edge as well. And then brush with the grain. Some people advocate using steel wool to apply wax. I don't like the idea. I've never done it, but I don't like the idea. You know, I've put a lot of effort into making this wood look good by sanding it. You saw me do that. You saw me spend hours doing that. So I don't want to then spoil it by rubbing it with something really abrasive. It may work well. I really don't know. So I've never done it. I don't like the idea. Yes, I'm going across the grain here. That's to make sure that I can catch all the little nooks and crannies in the grain. But I finish off by swiping with the grain. Just clean off the edges, give it a wipe. There we go. That's it. Wax, absolutely perfect for this kind of job because it doesn't come off. Varnish, it will come off, it will stick all over your fingers, it'll make a mess. Wax doesn't do that. So that bit of my cloth is filthy, it's not going to apply very well, so all I'm going to do is fold it around again, so I've got a new, that's not very good. You need to have a thick enough pad to be able to swipe around with it, so that should be alright like that. Yeah, so that's a nice new clean pad there. Now the next stage of dealing with these will be the buffing. Buffing is where we take off any wax that's left on the surface and it gives it a nice shine. Then we apply a second coat. But I can't buff until the wax is dry, and at the moment that wax is anything but dry. It doesn't take long. It only takes about an hour to be ready to buff. I do like to give it longer if I can though, so we'll come back later on and we'll do the buffing and apply a second coat. Okay, so now they've had plenty of time to dry, we can crack on with the buffing and the second coat of waxing. So to buff, we need another one of our clean rags. Let's get one out of the box, that'll do nicely. And the gloves, the pink man gloves, just to keep any undried wax, undried, still damp, still sticky, whatever, keep any undried wax off my hands, because it is a tricky thing to get off. So buffing, the purpose of buffing is principally to remove any excess wax and to give a nice shine to the wax that's on already. So I'll start just my cloth and then we just rub. That is literally all there is to it. We rub it and hopefully you can start to see already that we're getting a bit of a shine there. So I always do the cut ends first because they're the trickiest bits. Buffing is actually really quick. Just rub along the sides. I try to cup the fabric around the sides like that, so that I'm getting a little bit of the edges as well. Rub-a-dub-dub. You can tell when it's done, when you start rubbing, when you start buffing, there's a bit of friction there, and once you've buffed, once it's buffed enough, there's no friction anymore. It goes very smoothly. Just buff. Now while I'm buffing, I'm looking for places where the wax hasn't gone. There's a little bit there where the wax hasn't gone, so as I can pay attention to those places when I put the second coat on. So rub-a-dub-dub, and again the other side. So again, I'm looking out for any places where the wax hasn't gone. There's some there where the wax hasn't quite gone properly. So that's done, stack it to one side. Get the next one. You can see the excess wax coming off on the cloth, particularly on the cut ends, because we have to put a lot on the cut ends, if you remember, to make them take the wax in the first place. So the cut ends tend to leave a lot of mess on the cloth. So we keep rubbing. Pay attention to the ends because we don't want blobs on the edges. Keep rubbing this bit here where I had to force the wax in. I'm just giving a little bit of extra attention to get any excess wax out, like that. I've done that side, it's shiny. Yeah, and then keep buffing. The buffing can be quite tiring actually, not I'm going to go to bed and have a 3-hour nap kind of way, but you know, it's a lot of pressure on your arm. I am trying to stay with the grain as well, because that's what I do, stay with the grain. Now on this side you can see there are some places here where it's not quite filled in. Second coat will take care of that though, not a problem. So the little divider piece. Now for the divider piece, I probably won't second coat this bit because it's going to be hidden, but at least I know it's been done. So these little hidden bits, I probably won't second coat because I know they're never going to be seen. So keep rubbing. That's all there is to it. I mean, as content goes, it may not be the most thrilling, but if you're watching, I'm assuming you're watching because you want to see what I do, you like what I do, or maybe you want to learn how to do it yourself. I know when I was starting out, YouTube videos were the way to go, but a lot of them I found assumed a certain degree of knowledge already, which I didn't have. So I tend to try to include little snippets of information that I would have found useful, or tricks that I discovered myself. There you go, more gaps there, look. The occasional one, but as I say, second coat will take care of all of those. Yes, as I say, there's various tricks and techniques that I've discovered on my own over the time I've been doing this, and I figure YouTube is a good place. How many times have you watched a YouTube video where the YouTuber has said, "Oh, camera fault, things went wrong"? Yeah, it happens, doesn't it? Just happened to me. Partway through the buffing, my memory card was full, didn't notice. So I will tell you about what I chatted about in that time. Most of it was really showing where I spotted places that hadn't covered properly. Let's find it now. There you go. It was mostly down here. I spotted places that hadn't covered properly, and that will get dealt with on second coat. Well, thank you for coming with me again as I wax the pieces of wood for this combo coat rack that I'm making for a client. Next time it will be all about assembly and drilling the holes, assembling, filling the holes, and then would you believe there's a little bit more waxing to come after that, but I'll try and cover that all in one go. So the next video should see this item completed, which I'm quite excited about, and I hope you are too. So for now, I'll leave it there. Have a lovely day. Take care. See you soon.